Everything you were taught about prayer is keeping your prayers from being answered. The shocking part is, Jesus actually taught the real method. It just got buried. Before Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, he didn't ask God to raise him. Instead, John 11 records something strange. Jesus said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." Past tense. He thanked God for something that hadn't happened yet. Lazarus was still dead. But Jesus thanked God as if it was already done. That's not a prayer of request. That's something completely different. And once you understand what Jesus actually did, everything changes. Go back through the Gospels and you'll see the same pattern, a sequence. Step 1, withdrawal. Step 2, alignment. Step 3, interior shift. Step 4, power. When he fed the 5,000, he looked up to heaven first, not to ask, to align. Before healing the woman with the issue of blood, he felt power move through him. He was already in a state where power could flow. If Jesus gave plain instructions about how to pray, why does modern Christianity treat it as a mystery rather than a method? In Matthew 6, Jesus says, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret." You've probably heard that as advice about privacy, but that misses what Jesus actually meant. The Greek word for room is tameion. It doesn't mean a bedroom. It means an inner chamber, a hidden place inside something. Jesus isn't talking about external location. He's giving you a map to an interior space. If that's true, then everything changes. He's saying, when you pray, go inward. Beyond your thoughts, beyond the noise, go into your inner room, and then close the door. Shut out the world of the senses, the mind's chatter, the version of yourself that's afraid and wanting. Because the Father doesn't exist out there listening from a distance. The Father exists in secret, in the inner room. Jesus went to that place every single time before power moved through him. Inward first, alignment, silence, then power. But here's the problem. You were never taught how to go inward. You were taught to close your eyes and start talking. But thinking about God is not the same as entering the place where God is present. Method versus ritual. Experience versus performance. That's why the miracles stopped. Not because God stopped listening, but because the method was gradually lost. The instruction remained in the text, but the practice faded. What remained were rituals you could perform, prayers you could memorize. The words stayed. The method was forgotten. So let me tell you what Jesus understood. Prayer isn't about persuading God. It's about coherence. It's about entering a state of alignment where you and the source are no longer separate, where your will and the Father's will aren't in conflict. They're the same. Here's the metaphor. Imagine a radio. When you're not tuned to the right frequency, all you hear is static. You could scream into that radio all day, but nothing happens because you're not aligned. Prayer is the tuning, not the begging. From that place, when you speak, you're not hoping reality will change. You're recognizing that it already has. That's why Jesus spoke in the past tense at Lazarus' tomb, because from inside the inner room, the future and the present collapse into one. In the invisible, it's already finished. Listen to how Jesus described it in John 14. "The words that I say, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his works. The Father is doing it through me." Jesus became the vessel, and he did that by entering the inner room and closing the door. Here's the shift that changes everything. It's the difference between praying to the Father and praying as the Father. When Jesus said, "The Father and I are one," he was describing the state he entered before every miracle, where my will and thy will weren't two different things. They were the same movement. From that place, he didn't ask for miracles. He recognized them. He saw what was already true in the invisible and spoke it into the visible. That's why he could say, "Rise and walk," with complete authority. That's why he could command the storm to be still. He was acting from the place where he and God were unified. If you try to speak from your personality, from your ego, nothing happens. Because you're not aligned. The outer world doesn't respond to separation. It responds to source. And you only access source when you go inward, behind the door, into the silence before thought. This is why he spent 40 days in the wilderness. This is why he withdrew to solitary places again and again. He was realigning, returning to the inner room, and every time he did, he came back with power. Now here's the foundation. If you want to go where Jesus went, stop talking to God in your head. Instead, do this. Step 1. Be still. Sit somewhere you won't be disturbed. Close your eyes. Step 2. Close the door. Instead of starting to pray, just breathe. With each exhale, let go of the noise. Just breathe. Step 3. Find the silence. Feel for the place behind your thoughts, the stillness underneath. It's subtle, but if you stay there, you'll feel something. A presence, closer than your own breath. Step 4. Don't ask. That's the edge of the inner room. When you feel it, don't rush forward. Just be there. Stay. Even if it feels like nothing's happening, stay. The door doesn't open by force. It opens by recognition. You're learning to be still. You're learning to stop talking long enough to listen. That's the foundation. If you never learn to enter the inner room, you'll always be praying from the outside. And the outside has no power. When you learn to stay in the inner room, you stop experiencing yourself as someone separate from God. You start experiencing yourself as the place where God's will is expressed. The ego blocks the flow of power. When you enter the inner room, you're setting that aside. Stepping out of the way so what's always been there can move through you. Jesus called it the kingdom of heaven, not a place you go when you die, a state of consciousness you enter while you're alive. And he said, it's within you. This is an instant. You won't try this once and wake up performing miracles. The inner room opens gradually, but it does open. And when it does, prayer stops being something you do to God and becomes something you do from God. Reality responds differently because you're operating from source. This is what the mystics knew, what contemplative Christians have been doing for 2,000 years while the broader church forgot how to teach it. So try it tonight. Sit, close your eyes, breathe, let go of the noise, feel for the stillness, and when you find it, stay there. Just be. Because once you know how to find the inner room, you can always return. And the more you return, the more natural it becomes. Until you're not visiting anymore, you're living there. That's when prayer becomes your permanent state of being. That's when you understand what Jesus meant. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Right here, right now, within you.